Hey, this is John Young. Today we're going to be looking at doing a installation of a vinyl tile here. This is from Armstrong. Let me get the actual name of this. This is the Alterna Engineered tile. This particular one is the cream puff color, I believe is what this one is. It is a 12-inch by 24-inch tile, a vinyl tile, flexible vinyl tile. Now this is kind of, you're seeing it, it's actually installed here on the floor. But this is something that most homeowners can do with a little bit of guidance, and that's what this video is about, the guidance, because there's things that I had to find out the hard way with this. So that's why I'm putting this out there. What we ended up doing is we had about a 12 by 12 bathroom here, and we wanted to get up and take the linoleum out and put this in. So what we ended up having to do is ripping out all the linoleum and getting that all out, and then the prep is really the big part of it. We had to go and scrape off all of the glue and the paper that sticks to the glue in the floor, and getting it back down to the subfloor. Then we took a kind of a thin set level compound that it wasn't a pour-on leveling compound. It was basically something that we used, and I'll put a picture of it here. We used this to mix it up, and it has a little cement in it, and we were able to go and kind of fill in nail holes and just do some different things. And the reason for that is, granted, there is some thickness. It's about 3/16, give or take. There is a little bit of forgiveness if there's things, but you need to have things really floated out. So if you had a little bit of a raise, say a 1/4-inch raise between pieces of wood or something, you would need to feather that out 2 or 3 feet so it wouldn't be noticeable. Because again, this is flexible, so it won't ride up like some ceramics may ride up if there's a gap in there. This won't. This is going to adhere to whatever the floor is. So you had to come through and really get this all evened out and level. So what I did is, just to make sure, I had my trusty straight edge, and we went around and made sure that everything basically within 4 feet of a point was tapered. So we had a nice gradual taper. And this floor is relatively smooth and flat, so there really wasn't, I mixed up a thing of mud, and I mixed it up in my little sheetrock, my mudding pan for doing sheetrock, and then I ended up throwing half of it away because I didn't need that much. So once we were done with that, and that dries, then it became time to go and do a dry set of the tile. So we started, basically, there's a tub right here. You're going to see the edge of the tub. We started off that and laid the tile out in the room, and we did the cutting and fitting for this room because we have some cuts going on there. We had, of course, around we've got a vent there. We've got the vanity there. There's a stool back here, a shower stall back here, and there's just a lot of different angles and cuts that had to happen. So the idea was to lay these out and get it going. And what I wanted to do is 2 different things. Is I wanted to make it so that there weren't little tiny pieces, a lot of little tiny pieces. That's why we started at the tub, we laid out, and then I could measure over, and we found out that on this side we'd have a full on the edge of the tub, then it went around the corner. Then on this side it went across, and our last piece I had to take off about 3 inches. Well, that's really acceptable. I didn't want to have it when I got onto that side that there was only a 1/2 inch or an inch. You know, if I'm putting at least 3 or 4 inch piece in there, it works out pretty well. If I had to go just a sliver to make it work on it, that would be bad. Then I'd be better off actually splitting the tile the long way and then moving everything over so that I can have. And that's why you want to do a dry fit. Once you have it and measured out, making sure that everything's going to fit, then here came the important part, is that last row, or the very first row, but the last one I picked up. I went through and actually took my pencil and drew a line. We initially snapped a line to make sure we had it nice and straight, and then came with a pencil, because the pencil can be just a little bit finer than a chalk line. It's just the way it is, and I wanted to be a little more accurate with that. We did the line on both sides of the tile, so that way when it came time to glue this down, we'd be able to have kind of a guide to go on. And in a minute, I'm going to kind of go through how we cut this. I'm going to give you a demonstration on that. We had everything done with that. Once we picked everything up and such, and I had them in stacks in order. So the ones that started in that corner, I had them up on the counter up here, and I had this first stack, second stack, third. where I started was coming again in the door behind you and coming in this room. I started and I did the 2 rows and then I added a third, so I ended up taking 3 rows across here, and then we went and everything was pre-cut because it all fit together. And then once the 3 rows were done and they came across nice and straight, then I could go and finish this side, and then I went and finished this side and laid everything out, and it went wonderfully. Now there's 2 ways to do these. You can go and lay them down, and if you can kind of see, you're not seeing seams really, because we decided to go, just a second, I'm going to show you this. We decided with this to go and butt them up tight together. So you're going to see it a little bit because I can't hold them. But the idea is that if you can put these in and get them really, really tight. So there is a little bit of a hairline you can see on the floor, but overall, if you're standing 6 feet away, you don't really notice that. You can also go and grout these. And some people will go and lay these down and do the same type of laying down I'm going to talk about in a second, and have the spacers in here, 1/4-inch spacers, and then doing a grout. A typical grout is using a cement base. There's a special grout that you can use here that has a little bit of that, but it's a grout that can go on here immediately. So we can go and put these down, come back and grout, and this is literally a 1-day process when you get to that point of all the prep work being done. So I decided not to go that way. My wife and I wanted to have it look like this. This is why we did that. A couple of things again when it comes to layout is you're going to be going and you want to have it where you say if you're doing a full tile and then coming back, the second one you want them offset. So then we started the first row with a full tile, the second one we did a half tile, and then we would go, it would be a half to start and then a full, and it works your way across. So you end up with this kind of a staggered pattern going across the floor. That looks the best. If you go and line these up and you go full all the way across, that just does not look that good, and you don't really want to go in that order. So that means that you're going to be cutting. Now, again, we'll show you the cut in a second. But when you're working with these things, you keep in mind that there's going to be factory edges. And I don't know if you're going to be able to pick this up, but this is the one that is cut. And the way it's cut is with the utility knife. You could score these with the utility knife, and then they kind of break like sheetrock. There's going to be factory edges and the non-factory edge. Whenever you're doing things like this, you want to make sure factory edges are butted up to factory edges. And that's so important, even to the point of where if you have to go and cut into a brand new tile to get a little slip, the factory edge for the last 2-inch piece, you want to do that. You don't want to be using the non-factory edge against a factory edge, because no matter how good you are at cutting, and I got to be pretty good at this once I figured out the process, you're never going to be as good as the factory edge. So always factory to factory, whether you're hanging sheetrock or doing tile or always factory to factory. So once it was all done, it became time to glue it. And here's a look at the flooring glue. There's a variety of different, but most of the flooring glue, what they're doing with that is that it is a glue that you can go and you roll it on. You're not troweling when it comes to putting the vinyl planks down. You're going to be rolling that glue on, and it rolls on. In the case, the one we were using, it rolls on blue. And then as it dries clear. So we were having that blue to see where we were. We rolled the whole floor on, and in this, I started back here, and I worked my way out that door behind you. Then we waited about a half an hour. The type of glue we were using basically has a work zone of somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes for it to set up. Then from like 30 minutes to 4 hours is the work time for it. Some people have had longer, some people have had shorter, but that's generally what it is. Once that was the point where I could go and touch it, it's still tacky, but it doesn't stick to my finger. Finger comes away clean. It was time to get going. And again, we started with those 3 rows and we worked our way back and forth. Now, when I was going to go and put those down, you can kind of go and you can put a little bit of a bend to it as you're going to lay it on the floor. But it was like, okay, so what happens if I don't have, say I put the first one down, especially when I was working over here, if I don't have the next one exactly straight, the first one's not as straight as I wanted because I'm doing the next one. I found that I had a cheap utility knife, and I literally would lay this, put it in the corner where I thought it would be, to get in there nicely so it was up against the cabinet or close to the cabinet where I thought it should be, because I wanted to have just a hair bit of gap between this and the cabinet. Then I would leave the knife under the corner of it. So it was basically touching the floor everywhere but in the corner. Then I could take the next tile, put it in, because it's only 2 tiles wide in the area over here, 2 or 3, depending on if it was small pieces or the full. then I could come through and I could grab this and pull it back up again if I didn't have it fully seated. Once it's fully down and everything's making contact, it's next to impossible to get it up. It's possible, yes, you got to get it up there, and but as soon as it was down and you do you're done. Then you're probably going to have to be breaking it to get it up. So the idea behind it is I had just a cheap utility knife, put it under there, and that way if it got glue on it, and actually here, this is the knife, and it doesn't have the glue on it, I thought it was going to. It's actually really good. But it was allowing me to be able to pull those up. And that's one of the things I wish I would have known in advance, because the first couple of tiles I could have done that and I would have been a little more accurate. Turns out I was 1/64 of an inch off in this as I was going through, which is really pretty good when you think about it. But there's one spot that I had to do just a little bit of shaving on the side because it was off that 1/64 of an inch. So that's how we went and laid it down. It really was quite easy when I had my straight lines to start from, and once we've established the first straight run, then it became just laying it down, getting it in the corners, getting the two sides, the factory to factory lined up in there, get it in there, and then you could just start to drop it down. And when this factory was good and this factory was good, then you put it all the way down, check it to make sure before you started slapping it down, and then you could go and push it into place. Became a really easy project. Now you can see over here on the far, this is where it ended, and there's the baseboard. We're going to be going and putting a quarter round shoe on that. That's going to be my next step in this process. But when you get over these spots and you're trying to put in a little 6-inch piece, sometimes it's tough to be able to pull them in there tight. You can drop it in there and you can make sure it's flush on the right side, but maybe it wasn't flush to the tile this way. Chisels are just one of the most important tools in your tool belt. I was able to drop that in, literally back here, behind the tile, and I could just kind of carefully put it in there, and then just put a little pry on it, and it would push the piece in tight, so that you had a nice and it was nice and tight to the one that was before it on the right, and the one that was before it, kind of on this side of it. I think I used that a half a dozen times around the edges in spots where I couldn't have gotten fingernails in there to pull it. It was just a lot easier to go put that in there and just go a little bit, and being careful not to gouge into the wood, because this is still a pretty sharp wood. But definitely a tool I would recommend having, that little bit of a pry bar. When we got over under the cabinet, this wouldn't work under the cabinet, so I have a small cat's paw type pry bar, a little 6-inch one, and it worked wonderfully doing the same thing under there. And I don't think I have that up here. I think I put that one away. So that was that. I have brought up a piece of plywood. This is what I was doing the cutting on, because I didn't want to be cutting it on the floor and I didn't want to be cutting it on the counter. So it just had a little, and these are just some of the scraps and such that were left over. I wanted to actually show you how it is to cut this stuff. Now, the initial way is what I was doing. Is I was putting I was putting this on the board, and I would lay my straight edge, whether it was a long straight edge or one of these the speed square or in my big T square, depending upon which way I was cutting it. But I would lay it on there, and then I would draw the line just because I want to make sure that I was kind of in a position, and then I would go and cut, making sure that I had a new blade when I started. Now this is an engineered vinyl, so what it has is basically there's a little bit more durability on the top surface of this, and then when you get down below, you're into more of the vinyl type area. Still flexible and such, but that top is engineered to look like stone, and it is stronger, and it's a little harder than cutting regular vinyl. If this be regular vinyl, I'd be able to go zoop, and that would be it. But I suppose if I really push. Okay, so it scratched it, scored it a little bit, but it didn't do much of anything. You watch them do this online, and they go, and then they bend. Yeah, okay, whatever. I like to look at this stuff as I found I could be the most accurate when I treated this as the cut of about 20 cuts. And what I mean by that is you could set your straight edge on there, and then it was basically to go lightly and kind of score. Let's see a second. I gotta get this over to the edge so I can hold it better. But if I would just go and I would just start lightly scoring with my knife, just sliding the blade along the edge of the straight edge, and I'm not putting virtually any pressure on it, just a tiny, tiny bit of pressure on it. And after about 10 or 12, I will start to feel the knife. I'll start to feel the knife kind of like it's hitting gum. The knife is starting to get through that top surface. And now, if you can see right there, I'm starting to get through the top surface, and now I'm actually right there. That's the one where I just took one big swing with trying to push hard. This is just me doing a lot of little cuts with that. Once I had it scored like that, then I could easily put the knife into that groove and pull the knife along. But I was feeling that little bit of resistance from hitting the vinyl now, because I've kind of gone through that top surface, that more engineered layer. Once I've done that back and forth about 20 times, or not back and forth, but once I pulled through about that 20 times, give or take, it will break like that. And I went a little farther with typical cuts, but I have a nice straight cut now, just using a straight edge and doing that. But it was just that slow, letting the knife, minimal pressure, letting the knife score it, and then getting to the point where I was starting to feel it kind of grabbing on the vinyl. That's the magic of cutting this. It's not hard to cut. It's hard if you're trying to hold the straight edge and then try to put some pressure on it to get through that top surface. And then what happens then is the knife skates back and forth, and then all of a sudden you don't have a nice straight cut. You end up with a cut. Let's see, was this one of them? I thought I kept one that was a little bit rough, and maybe it was even this one. But I had spots where it wasn't a nice straight cut, and it was skating all over on me early on, until I figured out that just score it, and it will go, and it will be great. Live and learn. So don't be afraid, utility knife, but take the time and go in little bites, and you'll be really good. So that part is done. Then we laid everything out, put it down. Then the final step after everything was down, and we had to come through and roll it. We had a 75-pound roller, the big handled ones. Here's a picture one right here. Then we had to go through and roll back and forth. You want to roll it back. In essence, we wanted to go east and west, and then north and south. Now, some of the areas where you couldn't get in with the roller, I'm about a 200-pound person. Kind of walked through with the little baby steps. And then under the cabinet, we had to do the baby step. The idea is that you want to get that down, because that kind of contact cement, it's a pressure sensitive thing where once the pressure's on it, then it adheres and it holds. And this floor now will not come up without having to really damage the vinyl. And that's obviously, we wanted it to be that way. So the final step then, after we're done with that, is we're going to have to go and we do the siliconing around the tub we've got here, the shower stall there, and putting a little trim on that in those areas. And then a quarter round will go around all the woodwork, and then this floor is done, and it will look absolutely fabulous. I mean, even just looking at it now, it turned out really quite well. I'm really happy with how it looks, and it feels great for walking on. It's easy to sweep up, because it's got kind of a little bit of a glossy, slightly glossy surface, but it's really a smooth surface. But yet again, it looks more like the stone. I'll put a couple of links in the description of some of the stuff that I used on this project. If you've got any questions, put them in a comment section down below, because I've got this, I'm just finished at this bathroom, and I'm headed to go do another one here right away. So I will be well versed on this, and I can answer questions that you have. Is it something, if you've never done any construction, could you do it? Maybe I would think twice on that. But if you've done some things where you've done a little sheetrock and you've done some flooring, even if you've done putting in the little 12 by 12 tiles that are self-adhesive ones, if you've done that, this is really just a step beyond these 12 by 12 self-adhesive tiles. If you've got a little confidence in your ability to measure and taking your time and cutting, I think you could definitely handle it. If it's something that's a little too intimidating for you, hire a professional, because the job, when it's all done, you'll be like, yeah, it was money well spent. This is John Young here. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.